I hope you will welcome Dr. John M. Kennedy. Dr. Kennedy.
You know, I'm going to talk about something that I think is the most important part of actually all of medicine. And certainly something that's common to all of us in this room, and that is that all of us have stress. There's been literally a tsunami of information and research showing how stress, emotional stress, is directly linked to cardiovascular disease. And I think it's probably the most important part in terms of preventing heart disease is to identify what the stresses in your life, understand how your body responds to it, and then learning effective ways to cope with it. Relationship strife. We know this is true. In particular, relationships where a woman represses her feelings. Instead of emoting, letting out how she feels, she keeps it deep inside, doesn't express herself. That's actually not a good thing. There's data coming from Europe showing how people had a heart attack just 1 hour prior to being stuck in traffic. And there's a lot of data showing how this is a real thing that we need to start paying attention to. Terrorist attacks, 9/11, it's sort of losing its steam, but over the past 10 years, we've tracked 9/11 and showed that on that day, people worry about us being attacked again, and showing that that emotional stress is linked to cardiovascular events. Sporting events, this is pretty interesting. It started with World Cup soccer fans showing that the German team, when they played, whether they won or lost, these are pretty outrageous tailgate parties. They have heart attacks when their team plays. There's data showing now on Super Bowl Sunday, there's increased cardiovascular events seen on that day. We've known for years now, this is now 50 years old, data showing that hostility, road rage, when you get angry behind the wheel, that increases your risk of a cardiovascular event. Panic attacks, if you've had one panic attack, a true full-blown panic attack, it increases your risk of cardiovascular disease by about a third. So that's not good for you. And workplace stress. I spend a lot of time now talking to companies about stress at work. If you have two of these stressors, death of a child, which I cannot imagine would be incredible, problems with a partner, financial problems, moving to a new home, ending your intense relationship. All these things are very common, right? Well, if you have two of them, your cardiovascular mortality doubles. And if you have three of them, you're just waiting to drop. It's incredible, and it's very highly predictable. And this is data from about 10,000 people in Barcelona, Spain. It's real stuff. I spend a lot of time with cardiologists in rooms sort of like this, where I'm talking to just board-certified cardiologists all over the country. And I told them, and I asked, based on this data, which is the slide I just showed you, do we agree that stress and heart disease are linked? And we have these audience participation buttons, which are really cool, and everybody in the crowd can participate, and you can show on a slide, real time, that 100% of the audience, 100% of board-certified cardiologists across the country agree that stress and heart disease are linked. So then I ask my next question. I say, if we all agree that it's linked, what are we doing to help people manage stress? This is the slide directly following. Nothing. So zero. 100% of cardiologists agree it's a problem. 100% of cardiologists today, 2013, look at all this data that's come out, do nothing. And then we got good at imaging. We can show real time the parts of your brain that are metabolically active when you're stressed. There's this thing called the amygdala that gets on fire when you get upset or worried or concerned or frustrated. It starts to light up, and at the same time, we can show blood flow to your heart decreasing. So we can show objectively that stress and heart disease are linked. And then the most compelling, I think, and this is just absolutely fascinating, and you probably read about this in every newspaper in Los Angeles, certainly, all over the world, is the broken heart syndrome. And this was first discovered in Japan. It's also called Takotsubo's. And they showed that women, first in Japan, when it was first discovered, were having these stressful life events. And they were presenting to the emergency room with massive heart attacks. And they'd bring him to the cath lab, and we'd go inside and we'd be expecting to find a 100% blocked artery. It's called the LAD. So we also call it the widowmaker. And we would find that, or widower maker, we would find that this artery was wide open. You could drive a truck through it. And this was very counter to what we were expecting, because we'd say, look, everything that we have, every piece of information, every objective piece of evidence is saying that this artery is blocked. And we would go in and find that it's not. And this was starting to be observed all over the world, that there were stressful life events precipitating massive heart attacks that were all related to this massive outpouring of stress hormones and not a blocked artery. So now this is actually a very common diagnosis. It's a real phenomenon and disease called the broken heart syndrome. And what's good about it is, what's bad about it is that a stressful life event can precipitate death. And you know, the whole idea of being scared to death or having a broken heart is a real actually syndrome and phenomenon. So this is the objective evidence showing that stress really is bad for us, and that it needs to be recognized more, and we need to start paying attention. So I said, look, I'm over it. You know, stress is bad for you. I get it. I've seen it a million times. I've seen so many patients that are stressed that it precipitates an event. You know, relaxation must be good. There's got to be some data out there. There is a lot of data. There's data showing how yoga works. There's data showing how, you know, guided meditations work. There's data showing how pranayama breathing works. All of this stuff works to lower your blood pressure, lower your heart rate, and elicit the opposite of the stress response, which is the relaxation response. It all works. But I said, look, where is there a simple relaxation technique or tool or exercise that I can give my patients that's very accessible, easy to learn, and that works? And so I started looking at my patients first, and I took sports psychologists from Northern California, the guys that work with the 49ers and the San Francisco Giants, and at the time it was the LA Raiders. And I worked with these sports psychologists, and I was learning what do athletes do when they perform when they're under pressure. How do they execute with perfect precision every time when they're stressed? How do they do that? How do they hit the game-winning shot? You know, how do they do that? How do they get the 10 in gymnastics? How do they do that? And I was learning from sports psychologists that they teach exactly the same thing. They teach the athlete to rehearse and to envision and to imagine exactly the goal that they're going to achieve. So that's a big part of it, is exactly what you're going to do. What are you going to do? How are you going to achieve it? What's the goal that you want to achieve? And the second part was breathing. They would show athletes how to sort of pranayama breathe, but it's a little more primitive than that. It's not as fancy as that, I should say. And it's extending your exhalation. Taking a deep breath in through your nose and extending your exhalation, which stimulates the vagus nerve and lowers your heart rate, and increases this thing called heart rate variability. So heart rate variability is a good thing. Like, the more your heart varies is a good thing. And when you do this type of breathing, you increase your heart rate variability. So I said, look, this is what they're teaching every single athlete across all sports. They're teaching how to breathe. They're teaching how to visualize. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna put it all together, and I'm gonna give a technique to my patients, and I'm gonna see if it works. So I did it. I put this little technique together. It's a 7-step stress reduction tool, and it shows you how to lower your heart rate, lower your blood pressure, and to help you focus and execute. But basically what the lesson is in when you have to execute when you're under pressure is that you have to call on your skills that you've used to rehearse. And we all know this in healthcare. It's our practice. We've learned by our residents, training, our fellowships, all the millions of surgeries we've done. But we call on these skills that we've practiced. That's the part of your visualization that everyone is capable of doing. And then you use breathing to imagine the goal or the end.